This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Hey everybody, welcome to the WWE Podcast. Sunday, it's July 16th. It's 2023. Welcome to the mid part of July. And we're going to blink. Here comes August. And then summer's over. So, not trying to be depressing if you were looking forward to fall and football. Well, football's right around the corner too, guys. Training camps open. Preseason games. Fantasy teams. It's right there. It goes faster than anyone ever realizes. And if you're also into the MLB, well, that is going to go into playoff mode in the next couple of months. So, man, life moves fast, doesn't it? It's just, it's crazy. And in the world of pro wrestling, it's kind of the same deal. You know, you hear 3, 4, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, sometimes between premium live events. And it feels so far, and you blink, and it's a week away. And with SummerSlam just, 3 weeks away now, you would think that the card would be fairly full. That we would at least have some confirmed matches, a significant number of confirmed matches, and that is not the case. In fact, when we look at the actual matches that are official, we don't have any. And I was looking at the projected card, and that projected card is probably going to be official. They'll Adam Pearce the thing, but there are still nothing official. Now, let me run down the card here. Of course, we're going to get to the weekend review. There's a lot to talk about, LA Knight, everything else. We'll get to that in a second, but let me run down the card, and let me ask you what's official. That is Shayna Baszler, Ronda Rousey. Nope. LA Knight versus Austin Theory. Not yet. Becky Lynch, Trish Stratus, not yet. KO and Sammy versus Finn and Damian Priest. That is not yet. The Intercontinental Championship, Drew versus Gunther. I don't think that's official yet. A triple threat for the WWE Women's Championship of Bianca, Charlotte, and Asuka, not yet. Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal Heavyweight World Championship, not yet. So it's just, I don't know why that I feel like we should at least have 3 matches confirmed and we have 0. Of course, Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes, but that is not yet official. At least Cody challenged Brock. We know what Brock's going to say, but it's kind of weird. We're 3 weeks out and nothing is official. And I don't know if that's just the WWE creative team being a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger on anything official, or what the deal is, or that's the way they've built it this year. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I'm not complaining. It's just a kind of an interesting observation. Now, an interesting observation I made also that just came to mind after all of the naming conventions of belts, which I know a lot of you don't want to hear about. And I'm not going to get into that whole diatribe about the lineages being crossed up and non-existing and reappearing and all that. Right? We've already covered that at length, to say the least. But rather, when they have a WWE champion, which is essentially what Roman Reigns is, and then you have a world champion. And then on the women's side of things, you have the same. You have I know Roman's a little different, but you have the WWE Women's Championship. And you have Rhea Ripley, who's carrying the Women's World Championship. And I was just thinking to myself, well, obviously there's no real difference other than the name, but even the name is implied that it's the same. What do I mean by that? And this is just a random thought, guys. That so you have Asuka, who's the WWE Women's Champion, right? Well, what does WWE stand for? World Wrestling Entertainment. So if you're the WWE Women's Champion or the WWE Champion, you are just by virtue of the definition of WWE, a world champion. So having a separate world champion is also kind of duplicative. Because if you're in WWE, number one, well, first of all, you're competing with the same pools of talent in the company. You're not actually competing outside of the company. So obviously world is, we can get into that whole thing. But my point is that WWE, as we all know, is World Wrestling Entertainment. And if you're a WWE champion, world is already implied in the champion that you are. So kind of weird, right? I don't know if anyone has ever made that connection. Not a complaint, not a positive, not a negative, just something I thought of today when I was watching SmackDown. So anyway, all right, let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this week. But first, welcome to the show. If you guys haven't joined us before, well, we are the WWE podcast, and for legal reasons, I have to say, and it's true, we are not affiliated with WWE. By the way, we have people ask that. I've actually had people even leave reviews of how can WWE sanction this show, and they don't, because they can't, because we're not officially associated with them, and I'm not using their logo. Obviously that would be a problem. And I say we're the unofficial podcast of WWE, so that kind of in the name covers us. But anyway, we are not affiliated with them, and we are just a wrestling podcast by fans for fans, and that's kind of what we are. And I'd invite you to go ad free if you want to. Patreon.com/WWE podcast, WWEpodcast.com. Facebook, we have a Facebook page if you want to check that out, or Instagram or TikTok, all of those you can find under the WWE podcast if you just click that search button. But ad free is a good way to support the show, and it's a great way to have a Discord server and not have anything interrupted, and you can find that at Patreon. So there's that. All right, week in review. Let's see, what do I want to talk about first? Let's talk about Bayley, Asuka, Charlotte, that whole thing. Weird. And I don't know, again, I don't know where to fall on this. Many of you are expecting me to crap on this. I'm not, because Charlotte, Asuka, and Bianca are, of course, top talent in the company. They are right now at the top of their game. All of the women are. And, Bayley is trying to insert herself into this mix, and Io and Bayley are somehow still getting along. That hasn't fallen apart yet. But this is kind of a program I don't know where to go with. I mean, you have Bianca, who has been waiting since May 27th to get a rematch, and she's taken the good guy, the good woman path, the good Samaritan. I'm going to wait my turn and this and that to get an opportunity to get another crack at the belt that I lost. And her character would be in lockstep with that. Part of me wants to say, well, why doesn't she just do the one thing everyone else does and just attack the champion? But that's actually not what her character has been. So it's consistent with her character, is waiting her turn, being the nice person, and being the kind and all that. And she's starting to show shades of having an edge to her, which I don't know if that's a foreshadowing of a heel turn, or if it's just giving us another layer of Bianca. And honestly, I'm very pro heel turn for Bianca. If you give us an edgier babyface Bianca, I'm cool with that too. I mean, she needs just something different to keep her momentum going, which has all but stopped. So, this is not the problem, is the talent. The storyline's a little weird. And this week we had a women's championship match, and it was Bianca versus Asuka, which ended in a DQ, with Charlotte accidentally spearing Bianca on the outside of the ring, which is going to further tensions to Bianca and Charlotte, who seem to be on a very professional, friendly level on SmackDown. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. And they have a history, no doubt, but they, as of late, have been not in each other's universes. So time heals wounds, and fine, cool, no problem. But here's my question. Why exactly in this matchup with Bianca and Asuka for the women's championship did Charlotte and Io and Bayley all need to show tickets? Now, we've seen this trick done before. We've seen this logic implemented before. And that would make sense if you are on an opposing brand, or if you're from another another promotion, and you look like you're going to get involved, or there's tension between you and somebody in WWE, and you're showing that you have a ticket that you can be there legally. Why are we showing tickets for Asuka and for Bayley and Io, who were just backstage and in front of the crowd with Charlotte specifically in a segment with Bianca earlier in the show? Suddenly they need tickets to be in the crowd? What? Again, I've seen this before, and it's a clever trick, except it's completely unnecessary and totally not believable that these three women would need to purchase tickets just to walk through a crowd. If that was the case, by extending this logic, everyone that is on the show that they're supposed to be on, that walks through the crowd to have interference, a run interference, and screw somebody over in a match, what have you, they would need tickets too? Like, what? Am I missing something? I've never seen that before. To me, it was a total hiccup that added nothing. That they showed tickets. It's like, okay, cool. You bought a ticket for what reason again? Who would have stopped you again if you didn't have a ticket? You have access to backstage, the most secure areas of the building, because you're already a star, or a WWE a wrestler. You have access to any and everywhere you want to go, but suddenly you're going to show us that you've all purchased tickets to go in a public space? Again, this logic has worked, and to me, the most famous, one of, is when Bill Goldberg and Brock Lesnar were building up to their infamous WrestleMania 20 match, and at the No Way Out event in 2004, Bill Goldberg got a ticket from Stone Cold Steve Austin to be there because it was the opposing brand, which back then they actually semi-cared about the brand split. And that made sense. That way he could legally be there in the front row. And this is just weird. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I've just never in all my years of wrestling seen this particular execution of it with people who are already on that brand. It is levels weird of deep. However, what they're getting to is, for those of you that are saying, oh my God, get off it, is, of course, the triple threat. We know the triple threat's coming. Asuka and Charlotte and Bianca. It's coming. And that's fine. You know what? Predictability in this case, I'm all for it. Asuka has a very strong chance of dropping the belt here. I don't have an official prediction yet. That'll come in a few weeks before SummerSlam. But right now, Asuka, Bianca, and Charlotte, you don't think they're going to have a potential match of the night candidate on their hands right there? I mean, great stuff here. I mean, as far, not great stuff in the it's great stuff in that you know what the kind of match that this is going to set up is. Not necessarily the actual, any kind of magic going on with the storyline build. It is what it is. So anyway, I want to move on. But the other thing is a bit of a critique here, and also just sad, is Bianca calling out Asuka and Charlotte responds to open the show. Why? I mean, all Asuka did was stand backstage with her face paint and just shake her head at the TV screen. I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I get frustrated that WWE won't let Asuka speak more. From what I understand, I have heard a lot more than what she has said in WWE, which is all she's known for is nobody's ready for Asuka. And again, that list is exhaustively long of the people that have beaten Asuka that clearly were ready for her. So that phrase has all been disproven many times. That said, it's frustrating when Asuka comes out on a mic and you literally can count the seconds until someone interrupts her, or we have Asuka be directly called out by Bianca, or at least directly spoken to, and Charlotte responds, and you're just like, come on. This is why Asuka has a cap on her success as women's champion. If you can't speak, your communication depth is going to be harmed negatively. I don't care how emotively cartoonish she is, or how much face paint she puts on, or honestly, even how good her matches are, which, admittedly, she has been consistently very good. One of the top women in WWE. She will be a Hall of Famer. We know this. But you are missing that deep connection with the fans when they can't hear you talk. And WWE won't let her, or whatever it is. I think she has more to offer. And I'm kind of putting the blame on WWE here. If she can speak in a way that allows her to communicate more, I'm all for it. All right, let's talk about Jey Uso. And, Jey Uso, man, he was a badass on SmackDown. Jey Uso, I thought, brought it in a big way on SmackDown. I really enjoyed this version of Jey Uso. To me, this was the Jey Uso that I like, the one that is concise. He's to the point. He actually, speaks in ways that I can understand. He has this kind of swagger to him. He has the kind of Uso talk to him, and like, that's fine. Having a bit of a slang to your language, I have no problem with that. Okay, the slang is everywhere. The way people talk, and that's cool. But again, when it comes to excess, where it actually interferes with the words you're saying, and I'm just like, I have no clue what you're saying. Can you just take a little bit of the slang and inside jokes away, and just cut it down at least, so we get the core of what you're saying? And I think at times the Usos have approached that. I don't think it's hurt them overall, but that's just my critique. However, Jey Uso here was, to me, on fire. I really enjoyed what they did here with him. And, he spoke about what it meant to be a twin. And when his brother's sad, he's sad. When he's hurt, he's hurt. Or when Jimmy's hurt, he's hurt too. And he never imagined Jimmy would be hurt by his own family member. He said he respected everyone in his family, but Roman would get all of his disrespect. And Jey said he would spank his younger brother Solo like he did last week. And then he addressed Paul Heyman and said he had been puppeteering his family for 40 years, and it ends today. And Jey called himself the real chief, and his name is Main Event Jey Uso. Paul and Solo came out, and Heyman talked about the rules of engagement segment next week, and said it's a process handed down by Alpha and Sika. And he explained that what happened to Jimmy was his fault, Jey's fault, because he tried to rip the title of the tribal chief from Roman against the wishes of his family. He addressed Jimmy and told him that he was in the hospital because of his brother. And I don't want to go too much play-by-play here, but this had Solo take the mic and said what happened to Jimmy is all on him. He would never forgive him either. And they traded blows back and forth. Heyman ended up getting super kicked by Jey. Solo clubbed him from behind, and then Jey eventually looked down at a chair that Paul brought into the ring. He grabbed it. Solo got back in the ring. Jey hit him in the ribs and then hit him in the back again. And Solo and Heyman escaped through the ringside area. So I really enjoyed this. Heyman taking a bump is something that I think should happen very rarely. And I will say, if Paul Heyman could transplant his brain and his intellect, which is the same thing. Sorry, guys, I'm being a little repetitive tonight. If he could transport his intellect and his speaking ability, his promo ability, into an actual body that could perform, that man would be maybe on the Mount Rushmore of a lot of people's wrestling, because Paul Heyman is regarded as one of the best talkers in WWE and wrestling history. I don't care what promotion. And it's a shame. While Paul Heyman is ultra talented and he will be regarded as one of the best managers or advocates or wise men of all time, it's a shame because you know what kind of potential that could have had if it was transported into, an actual body that could take bumps. But Paul Heyman taking bumps is not something I normally enjoy. Not because he can't do it in a way that's, up to the wrestler's standard. Obviously, he can't. However, I don't want to see a 60-year-old man get dropped on his ass on a regular basis because he's basically indefensible. I mean, he runs his mouth, but he always says he's doing it because he's getting paid, and he's just he's the mouthpiece for the person that he's working with. He's not the one actually competing. He's not the one actually doing anything physical to these to Roman's opponents. So it's easy sometimes to feel sympathy for Paul Heyman quickly, even though he's a great talker. So taking bumps for Heyman can be actually a little dangerous for the babyface, but in this case, I think it was warranted. And it was something that does not happen often. I think the last time was when Roman actually fired Heyman and gave him a Superman punch. So this actually was really good stuff. The crowd was absolutely into Jey. And, just really good. And I will say that Jey delivered the kick as softly as he could. He didn't even aim for his face. It was basically a chest kick. And I'm not complaining about that at all. Paul Heyman is not a trained wrestler. He is clearly, just out of shape. I mean, he just is. That's a fact, right? He'd be the first one to tell you. So they did what they could. They executed as well as you could expect somebody of his physical ability to execute it. Okay. And so that's all I'll say about that. But the crowd was really into this. A very strong promo from Jey. Really great execution on the part of Solo. Getting more mic time for Solo is good. I don't want him on long-winded promos, but sentences here and there do seem to help him. And Heyman played his part well. Really looking forward to the rules of engagement, which at this point next week, we should be having an official SummerSlam match in the books for Roman's championship one-on-one against Jey. Now, I think I reported this last week, that the Uso intra-family program should be going by the wayside after SummerSlam and then move on to a new opponent for Roman. And I think that's good. Not that they can't revisit this, but I think it is time, at least for the time being, to pause on the Roman, Jey, Jimmy, Solo, Paul, all the tension. And there's rumors of somebody outside of the immediate family joining Roman Reigns to help him win. And I think that person, whoever that is going to help Roman retain against Jey at SummerSlam. Somebody outside of the family. So that said, the one other thing somewhat related to this, and I saw this on Twitter. I actually thought it was fake, and it ended up not being fake. Grayson Waller's tweeting at The Rock and saying he's going to have The Rock on the Grayson Waller effect, and The Rock basically said that Grayson Waller looked like he fell out of someone's balloon knot, which is actually really funny, very Rock-esque tweet. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're just playing around with each other. Nothing's going to come of it. It's not going to be mentioned on SmackDown. And it was. And it was mentioned more than just, a quick indirect way. It was directly mentioned by Grayson Waller. And it was mentioned about how, that The Rock was addressing him on social media rather than addressing his imploding family. He said he called the Grayson that the Grayson Waller effect if you smell what he's cooking. Interesting. It's very rare that a star of The Rock's caliber is brought in more than just in a passing comment and been a focal point for a star on social media and then brought on television and not have some kind of follow through. So I'm not saying with 100% certainty that this is bringing The Rock back to finally, no pun intended, address the situation with his family and end up with a match with Roman in 7 months at WrestleMania 40. But this is the strongest evidence thus far that The Rock is coming back. If you're looking for something solid to hang onto or sink your teeth into, this was it. Is it the smoking gun? Is it the definitive proof that The Rock is coming back? We're finally getting it. No, it's not. It's not. Okay? If you remember, prior to WrestleMania 39, a few weeks before, there was supposed to be a family celebration of some sort for Roman or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but it was very heavily implied that it would perfectly be set up for The Rock to come back, and it was. And then it turned into some other segment. It was something else. I think it was a tribal court or whatever it was for Jimmy or Jey Uso or Sammy, and one of them. And you're like, oh, that. And then right around that time, you heard that The Rock wasn't doing WrestleMania, so that segment clearly was set up for The Rock. Now you have The Rock being directly addressed by Grayson Waller, who then directly ties his comments to his family imploding with Jimmy J, Solo, Roman, and Alpha and Sika being mentioned. I mean, all of it, his whole family lineage and elders. And now Grayson Waller is directly addressing The Rock about it, and using the catchphrase, if you smell, right? So it's something. It's something. So we'll have to see if this turns into a big nothing burger, or it could be the seedlings of The Rock's return. I'll let all of you decide which path you want to take. I'm addressing it because it was directly in my face on SmackDown. So, those Rock fans out there, you finally got something at least of substance to talk about. All right. What else do we get? What else do we get on SmackDown, guys? We got the Brawling Brutes versus Pretty Deadly in about 10.5 minutes. And this ended with Ridge getting... he got pinned because of an exposed turnbuckle that... I think it was Prince. I think it was Prince who unloosened the turnbuckle. That hasn't been used in a while. That's always a fun heel ending. And then he hit the leg drop, the top rope leg drop on Ridge, the Fridge, for the victory. So Pretty Deadly continue their role here, beating the Brawling Brutes. And that's kind of it. Solid match. I mean, the 10 beats of the Bowden, I really, I don't know what to think of it. It's just a crowd-pleasing maneuver. For those at home, kind of neutral about it. I mean, he got up to like 20-something, and all I'm thinking is, man, like if you're used to being beat up, I mean, being hit by Sheamus 20-plus times simultaneously, damn. But anyway, all right. What else? Bayley versus Zelina Vega, very quick 2-minute match here, and Bayley got the rose plant or hit the rose plant for the victory. And after the match is really what was the talking point here. But before we get to the talking point of Shotzi, which is very interesting to me, is Bayley beating Zelina so decisively and quickly. I was hoping Zelina could kind of ride that wave of momentum since Backlash in Puerto Rico, and maybe some of that would transfer over to the States and all that, and it would rely heavily on the fans to do that, but also creative. It's a joint effort here, and it seems to have mildly transferred over for her to get a crowd reaction in the States that's solidly positive, and no one's booing Zelina. Let me be honest there, but the support for Zelina has waned. And her seemingly kind of going back to her role of being this small, undersized competitor in the women's division, being beat up by the more elder statesmen, is kind of back to where it was before. So again, small sample size here, but it is a bit concerning if you're looking for Zelina to get back into the women's championship picture, no doubt. But the real talking point, as I mentioned, is Shotzi. We got a recap of Shotzi's hair being cut a few weeks ago on SmackDown, and this led to a very interesting rabbit hole of unstable an unstable mental state of Shotzi. And my God, she has a lot of tattoos. Holy, you know what? Wow. Now one of them is on a very weird side note, but it's very obvious. Right in the center of her chest is it's a little bit of a darker tattoo. Let me just put it that way. I'm not getting religious on anybody. And maybe somebody else can analyze this. I'm not talking about her boobs. Okay, you guys. But her, if I'm not mistaken, it's a demonic tattoo. It's not a pentagram, but it's then I'll just leave it at that. It's a little bit of a dark tattoo that, it's just very obvious. However, not getting into the occult and having a religious topic. It's right in your face. Like, it's the largest tattoo on her body. So I wanted to mention it. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, this girl seems like bad news. Like, dating a girl like that, I got to say, for my own personal tastes, it would be for me a kind of a steer clear if you're that overtly, outwardly putting things out there, if that's the meaning of it. Okay, maybe I'm totally misinterpreting it, but typically when somebody puts something permanent on their bodies, they're very serious about it. However, I'm not here to dissect Shotzi's tattoo preferences or my preferences in women. That has long since passed it by anybody's interest. It's and for those of you girls out there, listen, tattoos, I'm kind of neutral on them. I have three myself, and you girls want to get tattoos, cool. My point is just like when you have something that's large and in charge and right there in your face, it's not like most people don't get tattoos as jokes, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. It has some kind of meaning for that person. So I'll leave it at that. All right. Anyway, I like this promo by Shotzi, if you want to call it that. It looked like a breakdown, and it was funny that her promo was all about her, or rather Bayley's attempt, according to Shotzi, of trying to exert control over her. And yet that's exactly what was shown here, while we had Shotzi then take a razor shaking her hand, and great acting, by the way, for Shotzi, credit to her, shaving her head, basically trying to take control back. But actually you showed you have the opposite, the opposite effect, right? Because if you're the one cutting your hair, well, that was perpetrated by Bayley, who started cutting your hair a few weeks ago. And now you're just continuing the actions of somebody that you said isn't controlling you, yet you are now performing the actions of that person. Like, obviously it's not, in fact, it's the complete opposite of what you're saying is true, right? Like, you don't have control over me. I have control. Nonsense, right? So this is, I think, a solid babyface position for Shotzi, who's kind of waffled back and forth between roles. Generally positive or generally babyface, and hopefully this gets rid of her taking care of business tank. I mean, hallelujah. Put it 6 feet deep. You guys want to attend a funeral for it, I won't be there. But that's going to be interesting to see what Shotzi looks like next week with a shaved head. Is she going to look like Selena? Is it Selena? When they had the Straight Edge Society? You guys remember that, right? The Straight Edge Society was CM Punk. And, oh God, I can't remember his name. But Straight Edge Society in like late 2000s was CM Punk. And I think it was Selena. Now I got to Google it. You guys are here. I'll type it while we're doing this. Straight Edge Society members. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Serena. That was close. Not Zelina, but it was Punk, Gallows, Mercury, and Selena, or Serena. Sorry. Serena, for those looking for the spelling. So Serena shaved her head, and that's the last shaved head I remember. Molly Holly, I think, did it. But I like this. This was the most that I've been invested in Shotzi's character. So, hey, she said she's a little weird. She screamed that she's in control. LOL. And that was pretty much it. And Bayley and Io looked concerned. All right. Where are we going? All right. Grayson Waller, AJ Styles, and Butch and Santos Escobar. This was I was going to say Money in the Bank, a United States Championship Part 1 tournament, Fatal 4-Way for again, Austin Theory's title. Austin Theory was at ringside on commentary. This match was almost 11 minutes long, and Escobar hit a splash on Waller as he laid prone and got the victory. But this is because we got Karrion Kross choking out Carl Anderson in backstage and Luke Gallows, and said that and told Styles they weren't done. And then Waller took out Styles on the outside and left him in the ring, and again landed a rolling stunner on Butch. And that's when Escobar hit his top rope splash on Waller as he laid prone in the ring and got the victory. So Santos Escobar wins. That means that he's going to face the winner of next week's Fatal 4, which I mean, could you have a more heavy favorite of LA Knight? And LA Knight came out, and my God, the pop. LA Knight was just, he said that you can call him the megastar or the GOAT, but sooner or later you'll be calling him champ. And the crowd went crazy. I mean, they were saying, yeah, they were doing all the sing along, all the right things. And man, I keep saying that they have to do this or that with LA Knight, and they have to have LA Knight win this next week. And you would imagine that's still my knee-jerk reaction is, well, how can they possibly not have LA Knight win this? Because many of us who thought, oh my God, they got to have LA Knight win the Money in the Bank, and they didn't. This time, though, it feels different because the United States Championship isn't a Money in the Bank briefcase. This is not a heel prize. This is different. This is an actual championship. And it's a nice step in the right direction if you want him to kind of live in that upper echelon of wrestlers while they get the stage ready for whenever he needs to move on, drop the U.S. title, and go into the top title, face Roman Reigns if he's still champion or whoever. So it is a nice pit stop that he can, or detour, that he can get off on the highway here and play around with for a few months until it's time to pull him out of the picture, have him drop the belt, and go on to bigger and better things. So this is a little different. Again, my knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, they got to have him win next week, and then they got to have him beat Santos Escobar to face Austin Theory. But at the same time, there's an argument to be made, although I still wouldn't go down this path, of having him lose and then having him not take the pinfall, but somehow somebody screws him, bad luck, whatever, and somebody else wins, and the crowd continues to get more and more angry with WWE's booking and continues to get louder and louder for LA Knight. I mean, look at what they're doing right now. They're louder now than before Money in the Bank for LA Knight. So those that were like, oh my God, what are they doing with LA Knight? They're so dumb for not putting the briefcase on him and all that. Well, right now he's getting a bigger reaction than he had prior to losing. Now that he lost that opportunity, he's even bigger. So the logic eventually, see, here's the thing though. Eventually this bubble will burst. Like this is not a sustainable push. A way to push somebody is by not looking like they're pushing him. I understand the ring psychology or the reverse psychology of it. I get it. We all get it. So this is a temporary, nice little way, underhanded way, unless you realize what's happening, of pushing somebody without pushing them. So perhaps there's an argument to be made that they don't even give him the U.S. title. That it seems like he's against the system, right? Or the system's against him, and he has to go against the man and all that. And there's an argument to be made here, guys, because he's the overwhelming favorite and has been since he lost that briefcase opportunity to win the U.S. title from Austin Theory. So it's going to be a really interesting match next week, and people are going to lose their minds. Think about this, though. As I'm talking myself into now having LA Knight not win, tell me there wouldn't be more buzz about LA Knight losing than LA Knight winning. LA Knight losing that match would cause more chaos and disruption and anger from fans and tweeting about LA Knight and giving this whole thing more attention than it would with LA Knight winning. Because if LA Knight wins, It's going to be oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, he should have won, and it's moving on to the next match. Versus if he loses, people are going to lose their collective minds. Let me know what you guys think about that one. Do you see what I'm saying? By WWE actually not having him win, people are going to create more of a buzz, more of a groundswell of that tidal wave of fan emotion towards LA Knight. And every time he comes out, people are going to lose it even more. Again, I'll be very clear. This is not sustainable, and I still actually wouldn't do it. I would just stop messing with the fans. Just give him something and something sustainable in a championship to work with while they lay the groundwork for a bigger run. So, however, there's that argument, and that's a fun conversation to be had. But it's kind of like one of those things, like how far can you push it before the bubble bursts and people are like, all right, well, screw this. Screw WWE, and they just actually tune out and get angry and just stop watching. I mean, that eventually would happen. So, okay, I'm clicking around here. Well, let's see what else we got. We already talked about the women's championship match, and I think that covers it. Io Sky continuing to tease cashing in. We already covered that. So let's cover Monday Night Raw, at least on a very brief high level. Let's see. We've got, as far as matches go, we got Drew McIntyre and Riddle versus Ludwig Kaiser, or Ludwig. It's like a V, right? And Giovanni Vinci. This was 11 minutes, and it had Drew and Riddle beating Kaiser and Vinci, convincingly too, by the way, setting up McIntyre and Gunther. That's what this is doing. That's the purpose of this, is really Gunther and McIntyre at SummerSlam. And maybe an eventual Randy Orton return. How long have we been saying that? Okay. More Damian Priest and let's see what happened there. Priest was speaking to, Balor spoke to Priest while Rhea and Dom stood by to work out their issues. Things seem to be all hunky-dory, by the way, right now. We got a nice video package about Veer Mahan coming to Raw and the whole Indus Sher video. I really like that. The Logan Paul segment with Ricochet, and I praise this, and I continue to praise it now, nearly a week later. I don't feel any different about it. I think it was a standout moment for Ricochet's career in WWE. That's not saying a whole lot, considering that he's gotten little to no character build, but him and Logan Paul seem to work well off each other. Logan Paul also seems to be coming into his own. Logan Paul, they tried to push him initially as a babyface. Remember that? I'm old enough to remember that, and they did not work. It was a colossal failure, and he seems to fit in perfectly as a heel. And him and Ricochet, I mean, think about the match they're going to put on at SummerSlam, presumably. But the flip out of the ring by Ricochet, could any of us do that if our life depended on it? Anybody the sound of my voice? I mean, here's the thing. Some of us may be able to get over the top rope if you got some spring in your step, and you're even if you think you're semi-athletic, try to land it as nicely as Ricochet did, where it's almost like he was in an Olympic competition and judges were watching his every step, every muscle twitch, and seeing how he stuck the landing. That's how smooth it was. The dude's a freak. And I could probably get over the rope and maybe do a flip, but I'd probably end up breaking my neck. Like, I could get over the top rope maybe, but even if I did, I would land horribly. I mean, they would put up an X sign before I even dove. And that's probably just as like a precaution or a very accurate assumption about what's about to happen, right? Like, they just have a referee there before I even, I dive over. The ref's like, up, X, right? Get the gurney out. All right. Let's see. Let's go. We got, again, a very good showing here, I thought, of Logan Paul and Ricochet, who took some personal shots at one another. Logan Paul, talking about how Ricochet was in the middle of he actually said promo. I don't like that. But outside of that, these two work well off each other. All right, Becky Lynch and Zoe Stark. I thought this was Zoe Stark's best match on the main roster. That's also not saying much, but I also enjoyed, that was one of the top matches of the night for me. she showed just a piece of what she can do. And credit to Becky Lynch, who's no slouch, of course, one of the best of all time. But Zoe Stark, who they're trying to establish as a threat, as a new star, you need the rub. Becky can afford a loss. It's no big deal. Zoe Stark did beat Becky. And it was because of Trish, but who cares? Zoe Stark still had a really nice match here. It was just well laid out, and just I enjoyed it. All right, we got Shayna Baszler and Emma, and that was 1 minute and 30 seconds. You can guess what happened there. It was the Karafuda clutch and the victory, establishing Shayna Baszler back as the killer. And you're going to want to make her look as strong as possible heading into a presumed match with Ronda Rousey. Now, Ronda did come out, and they wrestled around, and they were escaping each other's holds, and eventually Baszler escaped and left the ring. So, you're not going to get the heel and the submission that you want yet. And presumably, they're trying to position Ronda as the babyface, but this is interesting. It's like there's two heels, and they're trying to position Ronda as the baby, but it's difficult to do when she's so inherently unlikable. And the whole newness and fun factor of her crossing into WWE has long worn off. All right, Cody comes out. He challenges Brock Lesnar to a rubber match. Brock will answer that this week in Buffalo. Or I'm sorry, not in Buffalo. Where are they this week? I forget. They were in Buffalo last week. But so, of course, we're going to have a yes. It's just a matter of what's the stipulation. No problem there. Tommaso Ciampa versus The Miz in a no DQ match. 13 minutes, and that had The Miz beat Ciampa. And that was because directly of Bronson Reed. And he roughed up Ciampa, hit him with a tsunami, and that's when Miz covered Ciampa for the win. So, yeah. I mean, no. Again, I think Ciampa is still feeling himself out on the main roster. He has had really no direction outside of a direct or indirect relationship with The Miz. Whether they were partners and now feuding, Miz is a great talent, and they know this, and you can look back at the history of it, to introduce new talent with when they're just arriving on the main roster. You saw this a lot with Dolph Ziggler, which is why he's allowed to go on both brands, and with The Miz. He's a great guy to work with when you're first getting yourself and you're getting your feet wet in the company, on the main roster anyway. Okay. Let's go. We got Sonya Deville and Chelsea versus Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. 2-minute match. This ended with Sonya and Chelsea beating Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. Awful match. Bad match. And I'll just leave it at that. And I'm not going to sit and crap on these ladies. It happens. Right? It happens. And bad matches are a rarity, and they should be. But you're going to get a stinker every once in a while. This was bad. But, yeah. Learn and move on. All right. We got, let's see, Seth Rollins came out 1,800 times on Raw. I mean, it's just been, and then the whole interview he did, I don't know who it was with. I don't think it was Fightful. I forget who it was with, where he said, oh, well, if Roman Reigns did what I was doing, there would be no need for a second world championship. Well, Seth, here's the problem with what you're doing. You, and again, this is, of course, really pointing it at WWE management, are being overexposed. How many entrances did we get from Seth Rollins or segments backstage on Raw? And you're allowing anyone to have a championship match at any time. And you're defending it on NXT, you're defending it on Raw. Anyone that tweets at you, you're like, yeah, you get an opportunity, and you get an opportunity. Yep, did you look at me the wrong way? You get an opportunity. Like, it feels that way. And that is a horrible way to add value to a belt. But they think it's deodorized and completely made up for because he's a fighting champion. Well, by God, he's defending it all the time. Yeah, well, why, though? If it's so special, so precious, and nobody, you should have to earn it. You can't tell me everyone that he's defended it against has earned it. But they're doing it at the sacrifice of being a fighting champion for Seth, and it's, to me, going to backfire. If he didn't have his sing-along song that the fans love to do, this would be in a worse spot. That song has saved his career, I believe, and saved this run so far. And it hasn't been a horrible run. I'm not crapping on the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm not crapping on Seth Rollins himself. It's just the circumstances and what they're trying to position Seth as is the anti-Roman, the complete and utter other end of the spectrum, and that's not a good way. Guys, find a happy medium. It existed forever. And now you have one guy that barely shows up, defends his belt now every 4 months, and the other guy is defending against, fans in the crowd. That'll be next. You show up and, the 10,000th ticket sold. You get an opportunity at Seth Rollins' belt that night. I mean, all right. But the main event was Seth, Kevin, Sammy versus Damian, Finn, and Dom. And this, while the match, by the way, with Dom and Seth never got off the ground, and that's what led to the interference, or really evening out the odds of having KO and Sammy come out to even the odds of Finn and Damian beating down on Seth. This is what propagated the 6-man tag. But it was a good match that ended surprisingly with Damian, Finn, and Dominic winning against the World Heavyweight Champion and the Undisputed Tag Team Champions, who still need new belts, by the way. And that was surprising, but it's fine for me. People have already forgotten about the loss, but the Judgment Day needed that victory. They had been on a bit of a losing streak, and I think they needed it, and I'm cool with it. The heels needed a little bit more heat. So, yeah. All right. So that pretty much does it. We will be closing out the show here. Thank you so much for joining us as we covered the week in review. If you guys want to join us on the mailbag, you can do that. If you want to ask questions, you can send it to mailbag@wwepodcast.com. We do a mailbag every single Wednesday. Or you can call us. That number is in the show notes of every mailbag. Or you can join us ad-free on Apple Podcasts, wwepodcast.com, or patreon.com/WWE podcast. And for $1, it gets you in the door. But if you go higher, you can get a few video things I've done, as well as an exclusive over an hour interview that I did with Michael Gross and Justin Credible about some hilarious road stories. That's only available on the SmackDown tier and higher if you want to join. And I hope you guys do. Also, pick up some merch. wwepodcastshop.com. Everybody, really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I'll be back tomorrow with another current state of WWE with Anthony DeMarco as we talk about things unfolding heading towards SummerSlam. Until then, guys, take care. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to wwepodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.